are we live? What up, people? It's your boy, the host with the most. I do not brag or boast, and I'm coming to you guys live from coast to coast. It's your boy, I'm Chris the Don One. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Based on a True Story podcast. As always, rate, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, family, as well as a follower. Let's get this channel lit in the YouTube algorithm. You heard me? What up, people? Can y'all hear me? Yes, y'all can hear me clearly. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's address the elephant in the room. Story time, story time, story time. I'm gonna tell y'all the time where I had these friends, and my two best friends was O Andre, and I'm gonna mispronounce L's full name, but I'm just gonna say it was L something. Uh but they had these real ridiculous long names. And they were twins. And when we were little, they said, hey yo, just call us simply O and L. They were twins. They wasn't identical twins. You can kind of tell them apart. But, if you're not really paying attention, sometimes you may slip up and, get them confused. But other than that, we just called them O and L. All right. So it was me, O and L, Theo, and William. Now, we all was the ragtag group, and we knew each other from, I want to say, from elementary to like the last couple of years of elementary, all the way into adulthood. Okay, well, at least all the way to like I was out of high school for like 2 years. So that's how far it extended. Okay, and I'm gonna give y'all some back history on why it's no more. All right, ain't no hating, no we agree to disagree or anything like that. We'll get into it. Okay, so I'm mainly gonna be talking about O and L. So man, O and L, they come from a Muslim culture background. Their parents were fully religious. I mean, fully religious. Okay, and they were so religious that it didn't even matter if you believed or if you didn't believe in their religion or in their culture. You still had to follow whatever is going on in the apartment, or at least when the parents are around. So, thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for the thumbs up. So, in general, you could not curse in their household. Hey, look, thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate the thumbs up. You could not cuss in a household. You couldn't even cuss around the parents. Now, when O and L was at my house, there was no, they can cuss, they can do whatever. My parents wasn't, phased off that. You know what I'm saying? But like when you go over their house, they're super religious. Uh, couldn't cuss in their house. You couldn't watch certain things on television. Like you couldn't watch any violence or, you know, television or programs that were not made for us to watch. And they forbid it in their household. I mean, even the parents wouldn't watch it. Okay, couldn't eat pork. You couldn't eat snack food, snacks or anything like that. You know, everything that was in that house, it was either grown in their garden, or they go to these African grocery stores or sweatshops, for everything else. Okay, so if you go in their household, you're not gonna see Jordans or jerseys or anything like that. They didn't believe in that. Okay, they wore regular clothing. All right, and I was captivated off them too, simply because they were different from all my other friends or all my other or people that grew up around me, because I was used to being familiar in the hood. I understood why, Jordans were so popular. I understood why everybody wore jerseys. I understood the culture, but their parents were not having that. They were not having that at all right? So you had to follow their rules. At home, if they're around, you have to follow them, okay? So O&L's parents, like every other weekend, they would, ask all the kids, do they want to go camping? Okay. Hold up. I got, okay. 2 and 8. Hold up, man. Jesus. Holds up, man. You had a real long one there. Hold up. Columns 2 and 8. Beware, let anyone cheat through. Okay, yeah, we'll. Hey, I appreciate the thumbs up. I appreciate the support. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, I don't want to make this too long. So yeah, and I'll read all y'all questions at the end of this story. By the way, I'm gonna go and put that out in the atmosphere. Okay, so yeah. I would go camping with them. That was the first time I have ever experienced camping. I'm a young dude from the hood. We're not familiar with camping. We're not familiar with, outdoor. The only outdoor activity I was involved in was, playing basketball, hanging around the block, things of that nature, shooting ball and all that. Okay. And I was not used to that type of lifestyle. Okay. And I camped with them one night. And I'm looking around, I'm going like, man, where all the food at? How long we gonna be out here? I'm assuming they're just for the night. They ended up spending like 3 or 4 nights, and they lived. They lived off the land. They literally lived off the land. Stuff that, my first time eating poke salad, I have never knew that this thing existed. Okay, so his father would go out. Would go out. He would fish. He would, bring type of greenery for us to eat that he just got off the land. Like he didn't get it off no back of a truck or went to a grocery store or any of that stuff. Okay, that was the first time I ever knew how to fish. Okay, so he made this stuff called poke salad, and I was kind of, worried. I said, no, I don't want, that I have never heard of poke salad, nor eat it. Okay, so I went on and took a bite of it, and it was actually delicious. Okay, it was it was very good. It kind of reminds me of spinach in a way, but if you never had poke salad before, it kind of reminds me of spinach a little bit. It had that spinach texture. It wasn't slimy or anything. To me, it just reminded me of spinach. But anyway, that stuff was delicious. It was the bomb dealio, okay? So, that's the first time I have ever experienced outdoor life, was hanging around their father and hanging around O&L, okay? And this was like in the early stages of our relationship when we was very, very young, okay? And, he would tell stories at the campfire about, all types of things that we heard about in the Bible, but then he would add context to it. He would add like things in America, like in history. Like you gotta realize, when you're that little, the only history you can go off of is what your parents tell you, or what some OG would tell you, or what you get from the books. Okay, keep in mind, the internet wasn't popping like it is right now. Okay, so the only way you can gather information or consume information is either go to the library or an OG's around, whoever, they can tell you the real deal. So he told us the real story on how America was discovered. And it wasn't that Christopher Columbus discovered America and came to America and the Indians welcomed him with open arms, and that's how Thanksgiving was invented. No, He told us the real deal on how America was discovered and what did that mean for the the Indians who were already here, and what did that mean for us when they imported us from Africa to here. He even told us our own people sold us to the pilgrims. Okay, so I'm discovering all this stuff. Like I said, the only way I discovered any like the little knowledge I did know was from history books, and and what you would hear first and second hand from conversations and things of that nature. So he's telling us the real deal, and I worship those times hanging with his hanging with Owen L's father, because he would just tell us the truth. He'll tell it like it is, not like it was. So I appreciated that, and I felt like when I was following their rules and stuff, I was low key, you know, thinking I was Muslim. Like I believed God. I was like half and half. I was still you know clinging to my American roots, but then I was also discovering this new culture. I was in and out. Okay, I didn't really have, I didn't really have, no commitment to either or, but I was, swinging back and forth that way. Pause. Okay, so yeah. So thanks for the thumbs up. Appreciate the thumbs up. Okay, so when we grew older, the older we got, the less activities we had spending with his dad. And the reason why was, O and L, when they were little, their parents could pretty much guide them to their culture and to their beliefs. But as O and L got older and they started developing their likes, their dislikes, when they started developing their manhood, when they started developing or challenging different things, you know, the time, I didn't spend a lot of time with his father, and I wasn't really hanging with the father. I was more hanging with O and L, and the more Americanized, if that's a word, Americanized O and L started becoming. They, was pulling away from the Muslim culture and the Muslim beliefs. They was starting to become more American. So the stuff that they were missing out on when they were little, they're discovering now as teenagers and as young adults. They, like wearing Jordans, or wearing, going to games, going to the club, going to parties, hanging out, discovering different people, different cultures, different religions, and things of that nature. So as the older they got, the more they kind of was pulling away from their father's Muslim beliefs. Now, they still believed it, but they wasn't hardcore in it. They was sort of pretty much like me. They was dipping their toe in it, dipping their toe out of it, but they wasn't really committed either way. Okay, so they started picking up traits of what I'm already going through as a black man. You know that I things that I have been there and done that. Okay, they just now picking those things up. What's wrong and right and things of that nature. Okay, so and it's not a story about, oh man, they picked up bad habits and now they're in jail. No, they're not even in jail. They just started picking up habits that they started becoming more culturally invested in America's culture more than the beliefs of being a Muslim. Okay, so they picked a side. They picked that side. But their father, allowed them the opportunity to pick which side. Okay, he didn't, hate on them and say, "Oh, you gonna, okay, now you down with this cause and this, that, and the third." He wasn't like that. Their father wasn't impartial or biased or anything. He allowed them to be what they wanted to be, not what he wanted them to be, if you're looking at it that way. So when they got older and started experiencing more of the American culture, you know all that stuff we used to do as kids, we don't do that stuff no more. Now, we're going to parties. I've been going to parties. We're going to the clubs. I've been going to the clubs. Okay, going to strip clubs. I've been there and done that. Going to games and things of that nature, hanging out. They started to discover those things that I was already into. Okay, music. They started appreciating rap music more, because when they were little, they couldn't listen to rap music, not in their household, because it was permitted in their household. So now they're starting to adopt music. They started to adopt shows and movies and things of that nature. They would come to me and say, "Hey man, you seen this? Hey, you seen this movie before, Chris?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, that movie like 5, 6 years old." And then they're starting to appreciate things that I already done listened to, watched, did, whatever. Okay, so they're starting to become more like American citizens. All right. And everything was still good in the hood with me, O and L. We still hung out. Sometimes we'll go to the mall. Out of the three, O got his car before any of us. Okay. So we used to drive to the mall, drive to the clubs, drive wherever we wanted to drive. You know what I'm saying? So, everything, life is good and stuff like that. All of us had our own different jobs. We didn't all work together. We just all had our different jobs. And, we would see each other, like 3 or 4 days a week. Nothing big. Unless it's like on a work week. On a work day, it was kind of hard for us to get together. But on our days off, or like on the weekend, we definitely, had opportunities where we started hooking up, hanging out and shit. So, like 3 days passed, I'm gone to work just like any other week. And I waited until like Thursday night. That's when, I'm off on Thursday night. They have to work, but still, we would try to go hang out. Just like I'm working on Fridays and they're off. So on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we all kicking it. Okay. So I'll never forget the night. Okay. So like I said, Thursday, they O&L, they come pick me up. So, I hop, I see them. I get out the house, hop in the car. I don't know what we're going to do. Okay. I hop in the car. There's a female in the passenger seat, in the front passenger seat, and his brother was in the back seat. I'm going like, what's up? So then that's when I first was introduced to this girl, and I forgot her name. She was, all I know, she was light skinned and she was mixed. She was mixed. She was black and Chinese, very light skinned. I'm gonna tell you something. She looked good. She looked pretty good. And, they, introduced me to her, but nobody introduced me in what relationship is she to either O or L. Is that your cousin? Is that a family member? Is that, they didn't introduce me that way to her. So thanks for the thumbs up. So I had to wait a couple of days to let things marinate and cool down, to come to find out, L originally was talking to her and he wanted to be in a relationship with her. It didn't work out, but they, still wanted to hang out together and be friends. Okay. So, it started off as, L wanting to, want to be serious with her. Ended up being, hey, let's just be friends. So it's one of those type of things. O wasn't even faded by her. He didn't look at her that way. He just looked at her. Hey, if my brother bring her in, if that's his friend, I'm gonna respect it. So that's her friend, and that's how I respected it. that was L's friend. None of us, took her to the side, wanted to, be something more to her, but that's how I was introduced by her. Okay. And the first night it was kind of weird because I didn't know who she was, where she came from, this, that, and the third. After the second, third night, you start getting some clarity. Elle started telling me what's going on. O started telling me what's going on. And I just got used to it. I got comfortable with it. She wasn't no hindrance. She didn't bother me. This, that, and the third. She was, real nice. She was real polite. So I just, hey, okay, she's with the pack. She's with all of us. So now it's just OL, this girl, and myself. Okay, I'm trying to think of her name right now. I can't think of her name. It's been a while. Okay, and everything's good. So the next week we did the same thing. We all went and watched the movie. We all had fun. The chemistry was there. She's laughing, I'm laughing, O&L's laughing. Everybody's good. Everything's good. It was the third week where things got kind of interesting. Okay, so allow your boy to explain. So we were coming from the mall, and normally we just go to the mall. We go hang out. We do window shopping. Somebody gonna say, what's window shopping? Window shopping is when you go to these different businesses and you see clothes on mannequins and you don't have the money necessary, and you be saying to yourself, man, them Jordans look sweet. Them Reeboks look, that outfit, I like that outfit. Or if you go to to the arcades, or if you go to the food court, something like that, just hanging out. We ain't had nothing else to do, so we would hang out after the movies. So we went to the mall. First went to the movies, then we went to the mall. Then we're driving home. Okay, now this is in Berry Hills. Berry Hills is where the rich folks live. Okay, and I'm not talking about. Oh, you mean rich folks like like black folks and Indian folks or Mexican? No, where the white rich folks are. So the white rich folks live in Berry Hill. They're so rich they have their own police unit. Okay, it's not funded by the state. It's funded by Berry Hill. This sector. They have their own police station. Have their own police officers. Okay. It was raining, so we're driving. This, that, and the third. We drive past this street. Next thing I know, a car comes whipping out into the street and then the lights start flashing. Okay. Now, were we driving fast? Yeah, we were driving fast. I ain't gonna lie, we was driving fast. But was it super fast? No, I say we was like 5 miles beyond the speed limit. It wasn't too fast, but I guess since it's raining and stuff, I can see why he wanted to pull us over. Okay, I don't think it was anything racial. I don't think they were profiling or anything like that. Okay, plus it was dark. Could it be? Yeah, maybe, but I don't believe it. Okay, so he pulls us over. So we pull to the side. And the officer, asked for driver's license and insurance. Okay. So he handed him the driver's license and the insurance. Said he'll be right back. So we all just chilling. So we trying to figure out what we got stopped for. And I said, hey, look, I think we got stopped because, hey, look, it's raining. We were driving a little too fast, but we wasn't driving fast. Maybe, he's probably going to warn us, go out, with a warning, say, hey, look, y'all can't be driving fast and it's raining out here, this, that, and the third, just give us the riot act. Something light, I said, worst case scenario, you get a speeding ticket. Okay. Best case scenario, we get a warning. We might get get a talking. But other than that, just a warning, and he'll let us go. Okay, cool. All right. I said, as long as we cool, everything's straight. All right. So he comes back, and then he comes back handed O his driver's license and his insurance, and he started asking for all our license. Okay. I thought it was a little bit too much, but in the position that we were in, I'm thinking to myself, look, I don't think this is legal, and I don't understand why you want all of our IDs, but hey, I'm going to play along with it as long as we can get off with a warning, we get to go home. Okay, so I'm playing along with it. So I'm handing him my ID. L's handing him his ID. The girl ain't handing her ID. Old girl said, well, asking the officer, well, why are you asking for our IDs? We're just the passengers. We're not driving the vehicle. So why is the need for our IDs? So he's trying to do a long-winded speech on why he needed all our IDs. I know it's bullshit. O knows it's bullshit. L knows it's bullshit. She should know that this is bullshit. But you know what? We're just going to play along with this as long as we're able to leave, maybe with a warning. If we get a ticket, cool. All right? We're just going to play along. We don't want to be out here any longer than what we have to be. Okay? So she's going back and forth with the officer. You know what I'm saying? So now it comes from a pleasant conversation into an argument, a back and forth, a heated argument. So, she's saying, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do yada, yada, yada. This is illegal. You shouldn't be asking for ID. We don't have to give you ID. And, he's going back and forth. So they going back and forth and stuff. So all of us, we saw Mississippi burning. We know exactly what happened, we scared that we're gonna get arrested, thrown in jail, and our parents won't see us ever again. We think we're gonna get hung by the tree or something. Okay, look, this is a white officer. We in Berry Hill. This is all where the rich white people are. They have their own police force, and now and it's dark, and now you want to act the fool because you feel like you should act the fool. We're all telling her, man, just chill, just show them your ID. And she's going like, no, I'm not showing my ID. Okay, so they're going back and forth. So now the officer is getting heated. He's getting pissed, okay? He's getting heated. So I went on and said, I said, hey, look, I said, sir, look, we had no problem showing you our ID. I feel like, but if we have to stay here longer or we have to go to jail or something, I feel like it's right that you should charge her because we're following your orders. She's the one not following the orders. So O and L were co-signing to it, but they didn't say that they was co-signing to it. They didn't say nothing to me, but none of them didn't stepped up and said, hey, look, I agree with him, but they was going along with it. So the officer said, I tell you what, since y'all three are cooperating, I'm going to just let all y'all go on a warning. But he said next time when it's raining, and, he gave us the rundown about that it's raining, you shouldn't be driving over the speed limit. You should think safety first. And he just went on his spiel. She's up here rolling her eyes, twisting her neck around. I'm like, man, it's not even, is this all necessary? I mean, how is this going to get us out of this situation any quicker? You dig what I'm saying? Damn, time flies by. Okay. So I go, okay, so we get home. We drive off, O&L drives me home first. And then they leave, but I felt like when I left out the car, I felt like the energy doesn't change. The mood doesn't change. You know what I'm saying? So Saturday comes rolling around. Like I said, we hang out for like 3 nights. You know, I'm waiting on O or L to call me and say, hey, what we're gonna do Saturday. You dig what I'm saying? So I call O, can't get him to pick up the phone. Call L, can't get him to pick up the phone. I'm going like, that's kind of weird, because normally I can, I can get in contact with them. All right. So I said, you know what? Let me call his father. So I called his father and said, hey, is O and L around? And he said, L's here. So I said, may I speak to him? And he said, sure. So I can hear him say, hey, L, he says his full name, Elandre. He don't never call him O and L. He just says their full name. Elandre. So I can hear him walking to the phone, and he asked his father, who is it? He said, oh, it's your friend Chris. And it's like a little pause there. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So he picked up the phone. He said, hey, hello. And I said, hey, man, what's going on? I'm expecting to hear something from y'all, like, are we going to hang out? And he said, what we're going to hang out? And he said, tonight we're going to just fall back because of Friday night. Don't want to hang, don't want to do anything. I'm like, okay, I can respect that. Last night was kind of bad. It was kind of bad. You feel me? So that weekend, I stayed home. Dig what I'm saying? So I'm saying, okay, next week, I'm still doing my same routine, going to work, whatever. Thursday come rolling around. I'm expecting a phone call from one of them. Neither one of them called me. Didn't call me Thursday, didn't call me Friday, didn't call me Saturday. Okay? So I literally missed a whole week, no longer hanging with them. So I'm going like, man, what's going on? I mean, that's kind of weird, So I call, nobody picks up the phone, okay? But I didn't want to call his father again. So I said, you know what? I'm going to let this week rock out. Whatever they doing, let them do it. So next week come rolling around, I call. Nobody not picking up the phone. So luckily for me, I knew where O worked at. O used to work at this old chicken spot. So I walked in there. I saw the manager. I said, hey, what's up? Can I speak to O real quick? He said, yeah, sure. So the manager went back there, told O that I was back there, and then O comes out. He's got flour, he's in the process of cooking chicken. He said, hey, man, let me talk to you outside. I'm like, okay, cool. We go outside and talk. And he said, hey, look, so we agreed on, I'm on like we. So I'm thinking it's like O and L agreed on. So apparently it's O and L and the chick. They all agreed that it'd be best if, you skip a couple of weeks. I'm going like, well, okay, so what gives? Like, why y'all don't want to hang with me? And basically, in a nutshell, the girl was upset with me because of what I said to the officer about her. So now she's getting mad about the stuff. Okay. So now she's getting mad about the stuff. You dig? You feel me? So I'm like, okay, cool. And you know what? You know how you young, when you young, dumb, full of, you start making decisions based on your emotions. Hindsight being 2020, if I was able to do this again, I would definitely do things differently. So I said, you know what? F them. So if they don't want to hang with me, I ain't gonna hang with them. So I didn't call them or nothing. Which hindsight being 2020, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have tried to talk to all of them and explain my side of the story. And if they still feel the way they feel, then cool, at least I tried. Okay? So, that's pretty much it for this story, for part 1. I'm gonna have part 2 a little bit later because I'm pressed for time. But guys, tell me what you think. Rate, comment, subscribe. It's your boy. I appreciate all the likes. I appreciate all the subscriptions, the views, everything. I will get back with you guys a little bit later. I'm gone. Deuces.